Hi, we have another story from Bedtime Adventures, Fluffy and his friends. And this story, is called Mary Apple Tree. Once upon a time, there was a little girl apple tree named Mary. And Mary lived in a beautiful big orchard with lots of other apple trees. When spring would come, she could look up and she could see her Mama and Papa apple tree, and they were full of beautiful white pink blossoms. And she would look up at them and they were so pretty. And in a while, those blossoms would be covered over with big green leaves, but with the green leaves where those blossoms had been, there would be little tiny green apples. And those apples over the summer would grow into big, juicy, red, delicious apples. And Mary loved seeing the seasons like that. So you know what she said? She said, Mommy and Daddy, I want an apple too. Can I have an apple? And Mommy and Daddy said, oh, Mary, you're going to have apples someday. But now isn't the right time for you. God has made a time when apple trees need to get big and strong. And when they get big and strong, then they can have apples. But if you have apples beforehand, you could get hurt. Do you understand that? She said, yes, Mommy and Daddy. But Mary was really thinking, I want an apple now. So the next season, when nobody could see it, her leaves came out and she hid a little pink white blossom under one of her leaves. And nobody saw it. And then her leaves grew out, and she felt so good about the fact that she had a little tiny apple under there. Well, the problem was, it was fine for a while, but the apple started to grow, and it started to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was starting to pull her little branch down. And after a while, Mary wasn't happy anymore because, well, she didn't want to tell her Mommy and Daddy, and the branch started hanging down and hanging down more, and that apple kept getting so big. And then finally, one day, her little branch broke off. Now, Mary had plenty of other branches, but it really hurt her, and she really couldn't afford to lose too many. And the man who took care of the orchard, he came there. Oh, and he just shook his head. Silly little apple tree, he thought. She's not big enough to have an apple yet. Why didn't she wait? So he had to snip off the branch, and he put some medicine on it so it couldn't get infected and everything. And Mama and Papa apple tree looked down at Mary, and they said, oh, Mary, you need to wait. God has appointed a time for you, just like he appointed a time for your mama and for your papa, appointed a time when it's time for you to have apples. So Mary learned her lesson and she waited. And one spring, she could just feel it within her. It was time to put out her blossoms, and all of her branches were filled with beautiful, big, white, pinkish blossoms. And where those blossoms were, there came apples. But she was a strong girl apple tree now, and her branches were filled with apples and with beautiful green leaves. And that year, Mary had some of the biggest and reddest and juiciest and wonderfulest apples that you can imagine. And she learned an important lesson. She learned a lesson that there are things that God wants us to have, but not now. And we have to wait for them. And someday, boys and girls will have families, and they'll get to be mommies and daddies themselves. But God has made it so that we need to wait for the right time when we're big and strong and we're able to do that. And so when our mommies and daddies tell us no, that isn't because they don't love us. Of course they love us. It's because they know that God has appointed a time. And when we get to know Jesus, we realize that about him too. He loves us so much, and he wants us to have good things. He doesn't want to hold back good things from us, but he knows what each of us can take and what the right time for each of us is.